Warning, this episode contains mild to heavy explicit spoilers. Listen at your own risk.
Reviews, discussions, and theories about films in horror, sci-fi, and genre. This is The Horror Deconstruction. Like, share, and subscribe to hear more.
A creatively bankrupt writer and his trust fund baby wife escape the doldrums of a pressure-inducing society to relax and repair their strained relationship in a fictional, quasi-third world country with a five-star resort. One day the writer, his wife, and an insidious well-off couple spend the day outside the resort grounds and accidentally, while inebriated, strike a local with their borrowed vehicle. The writer soon finds out that in this country a DUI means you're dead meat. Fortunately, he's so rich he can, take a dip at the local techno water enclosure, clone yourself, have that clone die in your place so you can continue your rich people shenanigans. So this is in fact Infinity Pool, the third film by Brandon Cronenberg, progeny of the director David Cronenberg, the guy that directed 1979's Fast Company. We concern ourselves with the age-old story of the 1%'s untethered and particularly vicious streak against the plebeians of society. Alexander Skarsgård, who cannot be in a hit film even if the film was called a hit film, plays the disaffected writer's block sufferer James. He and his wife M, played by the coolly named Cleopatra Coleman, seriously, her name is actually cooler than this movie, silently snipe at each other as their marriage crumbles before them. She, financing his lifestyle as he himbos his way through another vacation looking for an inspiration for his mediocre writing. Rounding out the other leads are Mia Goth as the unhinged Gabby. Seriously, even her second base hand manipulations are scary. And her paper-thin, accent-heavy husband Alban, played by Jalil Lespar. Also, the only interesting other character is Detective Thresh, played by Thomas Kreischman. You might remember him from the horrible Argento Dracula 3D or the antics master Fegelein in Downfall, the movie that produced the Hitler Reacts meme. His character is sorely missed whenever he's not on screen. So, what do we learn with this movie? Well, if you're rich, you can get away with particularly anything. There's nothing beyond the pale as long as you have money. Hey, no kidding. I can't imagine that to be so. That's it. An excuse to document excess in gruesome fashion. That's all well and good if it wasn't wrapped up in such a boring package. Brandon's previous film, the wonderfully celebrity-obsessed Antiviral, at least had a disturbed and interesting performance by Caleb Landry Jones. And Possessor, while ultimately flawed, had an engaging lead in its body-hopping assassin played by Andrea Riseborough. This movie, every character is of one note. You can say that about his other films, but it's never been so obvious as this. I think Cronenberg comes up with an incredible plot device and builds a cold, calculated world around it. In this, the premise is so bland it tries to lean on vapid characters that are so boring you don't care what happens. Well, at least I didn't. And the thing is, Skarsgård is a good actor. He was in The Northman. He's great in that film. But there's something about the material he picks where it's not connecting with an audience unless he's a bisexual vampire. Cleopatra Coleman only graces this film with her name and nothing else. She herself is almost a clone of Zoe Kravitz. She registers as a cameo, basically. Mia Goth, who turned heads as the psycho Pearl in X and Pearl, plays at least a different type of psycho in this film, which I appreciate. The only interesting performance here because there is life behind it. Thomas Kreischman is the only interesting character as the Gestapo-like detective, but has next to no screen time. It should have been him as the lead investigating, but it would negate the entire rich get-away-with-it scenario since he himself is facilitating the bad behavior in the film. That is a gigantic suspense of disbelief for me, at least. How can a country that has so many poor locals have a cloning device and solely use it for the whims of the rich to get more money off of vacationers? Surely you can clone armies and become a first world nation. I mean, I'm only assuming they're not well off because if you need money from wealthy visitors, then an actual, cloning device, it seems particularly unbelievable. So this film comes off as an extended, horny version of The Twilight Zone where we don't actually get a moral lesson attached. James goes into excess with his rich pals, does evil things like breaking into houses and damaging property, killing people. I don't know what these people do. I don't really care. They clone themselves, rinse, repeat. Very boring. There's at least one spectacular visual sequence after the leads ingest a drug and have a hallucination, but it's still more of the same. Gabby is unmasked as a manipulator whose goal was to make James a plaything and corrupt him to see what powers he has as a wealthy person in a third world country. She suffers no punishment, as does her husband. Of course, the rich get away with it all, but as we learn, they're back to normal as they take their planes back home to live their boring rich lives. What did these people get away with? A vacation to be excessive creeps with no comeuppance and go back to the true hell of being rich. I'm all good with characters not learning lessons. You can see like American Psycho, but in this film there was such a threadbare sense of storytelling. I didn't care what happened to the leads. I wanted something to happen. It was so bereft of any character development. The final image of James staying at the resort feeling sorry for himself and what he's done as the heavens pour upon him means nothing. 5.5 out of 10, wearing silly masks and doing a cheap reenactment of a Clockwork Orange scene. This has been the Horror Deconstruction.